Are any the hearings going to be postponed and deferred? Okay, good. Okay, let's go.
However, it looks like Phil Christensen's not here yet, so you might.
Well, he'll go to the back then.
Walking in the door, you're fine.
Yeah, oh boy. Okay, good evening. The planning board meeting on Tuesday, March 7th will come to order. Everything that is on the agenda will be heard tonight. This is very exciting. So we will first do our continued public hearings, and we'll start with 1975 Salem Street. You were lucky, Mr. Christensen. You would have been deferred to the end if 30 seconds later. So where are we on this?
Okay, so just a brief summary. The applicant proposes to subdivide a 7.8 acre parcel into 3 building lots, with 1 lot conforming to R2 zoning in area and frontage. For the remaining 2 lots, the applicant seeks frontage exception special permits, access other than legal frontage, and common driveway special permits. The applicant has submitted a narrative to further explain the project, referencing the bylaw requirements, comparing that to the proposed project and the slope over at Salem Woods. And he has also, as requested by the board, provided plans showing the line of sight for both the common driveway and the single driveway, and the plans showing the areas of the land disturbance. And I can bring those up for you to review as well.
Phil, there's one behind if somebody wouldn't mind lending you that.
This plan particularly is the land disturbance area that you see on the screen right now.
What you see up here is, we originally did the project, as you know. We had one access to the lot. It was changed because of conservation's determination of river location. So we modified our driveway location. And then, I believe at the last meeting you had asked that we lower the grade on the driveway. So we reduced it to 12%. And by reducing it to 12%, the disturbed area on the lot increases to 40% disturbance versus what had been 35% disturbance on a previous, we showed you that on a previous plan just like this one. So one of the things to consider is if you want that slope on the driveway reduced to 12% from where it is now. The driveway next door, and one of the things referred to in this document that we prepared on the compliance issues, was that the project next door, Salem Woods, was developed as a subdivision, but technically, I mean, for all practical purposes, it's a common driveway. All of your rules and regulations regarding roadway construction were waived on that. And there's 3 houses on that drive. The drive was 16 feet wide, has a slope of 16% at its steepest for about 100 feet. So when we look at that compared to what we have, we say, well, gee, we're in better shape than that. We have a flatter grade. We designed at our steepest to be 14% for only about 45 feet of length, with an average driveway grade of 9%. And as I said, 16 feet wide. The driveway next door is only 16 feet wide for 3 houses. We have 2 houses, and that has a slope of 15.85% at its steepest for 100 feet. And additionally, if you look at the subdivision next door, the stormwater management controls are fairly meager in there, and it would not meet present standards for stormwater management. Now, we're not required to meet stormwater management standards on a state level because it's only a 3-lot subdivision that we're doing. But we are doing it because of stormwater management regulations. And additionally, if you look at the property next door, as I put in there, I believe that property is pretty close to 65% undisturbed, 35% disturbed on the site, which is pretty much comparable to what we're doing on our property. Also, if you look in the neighborhood, you'll find out that there's frontage exception lots in the neighborhood. There's also properties that have access not through the frontage. There's one lot particularly, I point out, has frontage on 2 streets, but its access is from a 3rd street on a common driveway for 2 lots. So what we've done here is present a plan that's in conformance with the rules and regulations and in conformance with other projects in the neighborhood which are quite similar. So we would, if you choose, we'll put the driveway at 12% as our latest design is, if you would like that, or leave it at the 14% with less disturbance to the property. But we feel that we've met all your standards. And we've, oh, by the way, Mr. Kellogg, you asked for site distance. We provided site distance. I'm sure you saw those sketches. Okay.
I'm amazed that anybody drives as slow as 40 on that road.
Well, they hope they do.
Not to my experience.
I hope they do.
They don't.
Well,
But I
by
know
the
we can't hold you to the facts. It's got to be the law.
yeah, and just remember too that the site distance I think you were worried about is down again towards Salem Woods subdivision, which is farther down the road than it's to the south of our project. You know, so that's 150 feet even farther south. So we have better sight lines than they do, and that's a previously approved subdivision.
The basic plans for this, I think it's the topos. I just want to, before we, just,
So this is the most recently
That's the one with the shallower drives. Because of the drainage issues with the shallower drive, we couldn't get a drain pipe under the driveway and have it low enough to comply with the grades on the north side of that drive, so we had to increase the size of the detention pond and direct flow to that rather than to the northerly as the flow would go normally.
and in general, you did the detention pond so that you could meet all the standards, is that?
So we can meet stormwater standards, right?
Okay.
Your stormwater regulations, so we don't increase the peak flow to the street.
So,
So there's a 5% variance in disturbance for getting a lower grade, is that the?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And most of it, you want to show the two, can you show the two side by side or not? Can you do a split screen? But it's all basically in the area of the
Really, the
the
detention
home,
pond
the
area.
detention pond in the home, so, yeah.
You can see that's the one with the most disturbance in the yellow.
Just go back to the home screen. I think that's the only way you're going to get them side by side.
yeah.
Okay. So it's really just that small area there in
So-
between the,
Yeah, in between, you can see, if you see them side by side, you see that area towards the front of the lot, and it has more disturbance in it.
So, any other, Pete, do you have any questions? Laura? Dave? Lynn, anything more? Aaron, is our new member? Do you have any words of wisdom for us here? Just sort of by way of background, this is an application because it's the type of lot is a frontage exception lot. They have to come to the board for approval, and they're putting a common driveway in, so that's what we're reviewing here. So my personal preference is to go with the steeper slope and the less disturbance because there's a little bit of caveat emptor here. I mean, anybody that's going to buy this is going to know what they're getting into, and I think that the less disturbance, the better for a minimal change. That's just my opinion, but
I tried to go with safety first.
I was leaning towards that way.
Yeah.
what's
In the
that?
beginning, I was leaning towards the 5% increase.
It's not much, it's the rear of the
So
lot.
is that the way you want to go?
That's what I was thinking originally.
Okay.
How far back from Salem Street is the grade that we're talking about?
About 100 feet.
And is it fairly level going up to Salem Street?
Right, it's roughly goes from a 5% grade to 14% down to 5 or 6% at the top. So, and the one next door, just remember, is almost 16% grade.
Yeah.
That's been there for 4 years anyway.
difference in grades between the two or what?
The average grade on the one with the, where it's steepest in the center at 14%, the average grade of that road is about 9%. Where I reduced that to 12 at the steepest section, which is only about 40 feet long, that the average grade is like 8.5%.
So from my perspective, we're only gaining 2% reduction in grade. I think that's de
Yeah,
minimis.
5% of the
5%
lot
of the
is...
disturbed zone, and it's over a very short section. So, I mean, I appreciate the other perspective, but I'd go with the less disturbed zone.
I go for the trees.
Go for the trees. Well, then I guess it's 3 for the trees and 2 not, so...
And we need 4 for a special permit, though, right?
Yeah, well, we're talking about changing a condition, so what I would recommend at this point, if we don't have anything else open, let's close the public hearing, let's go into the decision, and then we'll make as part of the motion how we want to handle that 12 versus 14%, okay? Is there anything else before we close that we need to know?
That would be referencing the plan set and the date, so
Yeah.
that's how you can handle it.
Yeah,
We
okay. Is there anything else before we close we need to know? Okay.
DPW's comments are all really related to making sure there's no runoff onto Salem Street, which would all be handled under the land disturbance permit. which
the
is con-
driveway permit as well.
And the driveway,
Yeah.
yeah, so which is conditioned.
Okay,
They will
it's
have to go
conditioned
through
in there.
those
Okay,
permits.
good, okay. So would somebody make a motion to close the public hearing? Yeah.
With respect to the runoff down the driveway, is there any requirement in how the driveway is constructed with, you know,
Yeah, so they'll want
to
it
divert that?
Right, so they'll want it to swale off to the sides,
What,
so that it doesn't run onto Salem Street.
in the plan, the driveway is super elevated 2%, so one side of the driveway is higher than the other, and it's super elevated towards infiltration chambers on the downhill side of that.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing for the common driveway for 1975 Salem Street.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's go to our decision here.
That's dispensed with the headers.
Their footers.
No, I see the footer, but there used to be headers and footers.
They used to just be headers,
Oh, okay.
and I just found that it was easier to flip through a decision
Yeah,
at the
okay.
bottom, but I can definitely
No, no,
reverse
no,
that
it's
if
fine.
there's a preference by the board.
Nope.
One of the things that I think you should put in here, because it's actually sort of kind of a critical nexus for this, is that this is clearly a superior design to a conventional subdivision because it would result in a lot more disturbance and misuse of the land. And I think that's part of the reason why we're doing it this way as opposed to a regular road and, 50-foot frontage and so forth.
Is number 11 our normal language? The dead-end street?
Yes,
I'm
it's part of the bylaw.
One of the conditions.
It might be, but I'm not sure. Wait a second. It is, well, that is true, but it's really
Have a street there.
not, I mean, it's not really germane to the circumstance, I don't think, because if it would have been at the, typically what we do it for is when in a case where we have a subdivision, that the road gets routed in such a way as, maybe there's abutting land, but they run the road right through to where there's an existing house. So I don't think that that would come to play in this case.
I agree, it's listed as one of the findings the board should make, and so we can strike it.
In number 2, it says the specific site is an appropriate location for access to the lot. Does that mean the plan or the proposal? Or?
That's part, again, of the language that the lot be specifically placed.
But I mean, you might even say that it has adequate sight distance too. I mean, yeah.
I've always thought of site and lot as kind of the same thing in this, but the site is really the way the property is developed.
One of the things that, and I don't, you know, you may have put it here, but one of the things that we want to ensure on this is that there's no further subdivision of the property. And so we need to get that in some of the legal documents at some point, yeah,
That'll be a condition,
yeah,
the standard language.
yeah. And then I think I would prefer to deal with that 14 versus 12% is that the plans will be adjusted to reflect the 14%. I hope you guys are okay, because it's the 3-2 votes for an individual thing as opposed to the overall thing. I mean,
You know, it's the vote of the plan, the whole thing, but.
well, I mean,
like Bill said.
we could make that change,
No.
and we could put it in there, and then you could vote against the whole decision. But I don't think you would do that. So.
No.
Because it goes through the land disturbance, so they can't do anything with the land until they A&R the land, and then they also need to go for a land disturbance permit. So all of that monitoring would be done as part of the land disturbance permit and not necessarily this, because this allows them to A&R the lot so that they have the appropriate dimensional requirements
Right.
in order to A&R and then go through the land disturbance. So there will be a monitor, but not at this point in time.
Yeah. Okay.
So we condition prior to any site disturbance, they have to get the land disturbance.
So.
And where do we put in that, do we put it in the land disturbance that they can't, you know, because what happens is the homeowner's going to come in and, you know, bulldoze half of those trees down after the fact? Where do we?
Well,
we
what
put that
you
in the
could do
land
is
disturbance
maybe
or in there?
do something about the limit of work before they, is that
It should
in
be-
there, where we delineate the limit of work?
It goes under the land disturbance? Okay,
Yeah, okay,
And make it appropriate with the deed and things like that.
okay.
okay.
Okay, anything else? So we'll put the 14% versus the 12, and is there anything else that anybody wants to change? Hearing none, will somebody like to make a motion to approve the special permit as amended this evening?
I will make a motion to approve a special permit as amended for 1975 Salem Street.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made and accepted. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Somebody going to vote now?
Aye.
You can't vote no. Now we got to go, we've rejected.
I said aye,
Oh, you said aye.
but we're just feeling
paused.
delayed because we were like
Oh, okay,
totally
okay.
dismissed. But
Okay, so you
It
did,
was 5 in favor.
5 in favor. Okay, you were tormenting me.
Yes, you weren't paying attention to us.
I wasn't paying attention to you, I'm sorry. Okay, so the vote is 5-0. So,
And motion was Dave.
Dave, and the vote was 5-0. Because I can't hear anymore. I went to the doctor and I am losing hearing, so,
Thank you very much.
among other things. Yeah, among other things. Getting old and cranky.
Speak up, Phil, we didn't hear
Yeah,
that.
yeah, what'd you say? Okay, next item, Brook School, 1160 Great Pond Road.
And for another, just a brief update, this is for a watershed protection special district and a site plan review special permit to authorize the reconstruction of an existing developed area on the Brook School campus consisting of the demolition and removing a building and constructing of an art center. We had a few outstanding issues at the last hearing. Since then, Fire has reviewed the turn analysis and stated that they will do a field check prior to installation of any curbing, but otherwise, everything else looks good. The stormwater consultant has also stated that they have addressed all of her concerns. The applicant has also submitted their fertilizer program for the campus as requested by the board. The initial document had some conflicting language in regards to some of the covenants that we had at the planning board approved back in 2004. So they have made those changes and to reflect the language that was a part of the covenant, and that is all included in the packet. And lastly, just as a note, at the last public hearing, it was noted that the barn was built in 1926. The barn was actually built in 1871, which makes it a 100-year structure, and therefore needs to go through the demolition delay process.
I was wondering when somebody's going to bring that up.
So they have actually started to go through the process back in 2016, anticipating this project. And so there was a little bit of a disconnect between departments and whatnot. But so they have a signed application from 2016, but there is, again, no paperwork with the building department. And then also there's some, there's no way to really see whether or not the signature was to date the acceptance of the application or if it was the approval of the application. So the building commissioner and the chair of the Historic District Commission are going to be meeting tomorrow actually to discuss this issue to make sure that they're all
It's the
set.
Historical District Commission makes the call.
Yes.
They do.
Yeah.
And so I've talked to Kathy Siska, the chair of that. She has acknowledged they came before her 3 times. They visited the site. They did deem it to
Okay.
be able to be demolished. It didn't have significance to the town of North Andover. It is a significant building, but it didn't meet their criteria. So I actually have an unrelated meeting with her tomorrow. I'm just going to go over what process she wants them to follow. But as far as your condition, it should be they must meet the requirements
Yeah,
of
just meet the
demolition.
requirements, yeah. Okay.
But I guess the answer, they were thinking the chapel when you asked the question, and so that was the date of the chapel, not the
Okay.
barn. So, but it's all been addressed and will continue to be addressed before it gets demolished.
So what do we have to hear tonight? Is there information we need to receive from the applicant tonight that we don't have?
Explanation of Lisa's comments, so they've gone back and forth. Lisa's been satisfied. There was comments related to the sump pump. I don't know if you want an update on that. So Lisa kind of pushed back a little bit on the sump pump, but they confirmed that the way they're going to handle it, she has accepted.
Okay. So maybe the applicant give us just a 30-second update. I feel like we should. If you're all come here, we might as well let's talk a little bit. Just a quick update on the changes you made and the things that maybe we should be aware of.
Sure. We,
If you could just come up to the mic and identify yourself, that would be great.
Andrew Leonard, AC Leonard Associates, landscape architect. We have Anthony Cleaves, also from Whitman and Bingham, the civil engineer on the project. We have updated the, provided the turning radii for the fire department for the changes to the parking area. What we discussed with them, they actually reached out and said, hey, can we do a drive-through before you put the curbing in? We said, great, we'll spray it out, they'll drive it, make sure everything's great, and I think that was a statement you heard back. We issued the soil testing protocol, which actually is a licensed site professional who will be looking at the soil, testing the soil, watching the soil on both ends as it moves from one part of the site to the other. There's a fairly thorough description in their letter. On the fertilizing protocol, we did issue 2. One memo was their base memo that they had internally, which didn't actually fulfill all the language that was in the covenant. We want to make sure it matched up. They were actually following most of the covenant. What it actually changed, we think, is for the better in that they reduced the amount of phosphorus. The original 2004 plan allowed phosphorus to be placed at every treatment, and now phosphorus is only used when the soil demands it, which is, we think, based upon what we've heard from the board, that that's actually a good thing. There also are a few areas of campus that are no longer fertilized that were fertilized in 2004, so there's actually been a reduction in that. In particular, the bowl area that feeds the lake, which is important. And then the comments from Lisa, we did update the Zone A borders to her requirements, and it may be better if Anthony describes the sump pump change with the description from the I forget what the engineer. What's the engineer's name?
Lisa.
No.
Oh,
McPhail. Thank you.
Again, Anthony Cleaves, Whitman and Bingham Associates, civil engineers for the project. So one of the reviewers' concerns was that we have a sump pump associated to keep the basement dry. And so the concern was a continuous withdrawal of groundwater, all throughout the year. Had our geotech engineers take a look at that, looked at their soils information, and as they expressed in their letter, the nature of the soils out there are glacial till, fairly impervious soils. So that the water that you have there, they expect is more of a perched water table, water coming from the surface. Rain comes down, kind of sits up high, and that's the water that they're seeing. And so also with the impervious nature of the soils, you're only going to be moving water that is immediately adjacent to the building, because water is going to be difficult to move through the impervious nature of the soils. I look at it in contrast to, say, you're in a gravel pit. If you're in the groundwater table in a gravel pit and you stop pumping, you're pumping an aquifer. You're going to be pulling groundwater from all over the place. But from here, any water that may be there is just in and around the building. And so with that information, the expectation is it will not be running continuously. You'd probably maybe see it more so after a storm event. So it's more associated with more of a storm water than pulling groundwater continuously from around the foundation. And that's what was kind of summarized in that letter from the geotechnical engineer. And so that was the synopsis on that.
Plan B, if you do find out you're taking groundwater, where you're going to pump it out to, can you put it into some place to recharge?
So so it's still going to pump. This is the place to discharge it, and if I can show you on here. So where it's coming out is on this side of the building, in this location here. And so you may or may not recall, as part of the chapel project, we put in some rain gardens along a driveway here to help provide some more recharge. So this water would pump out of the building, go across the grass, get some more potential to infiltrate back into the ground, go across a driveway, there's 2 rain gardens, another chance to get back into the ground. And then if it's a stormwater situation and the rain gardens have a lot of water in it, they overflow into the big grass bowl, more potential to recharge, and then eventually get back out to the lake. So there's many opportunities for it to get back into the ground. Plus, the other thing to note, one of the things we looked at was, well, we could tie it into the stormwater system that's there. But the stormwater system that's there actually brings the water away from the watershed, and we don't want to take the water out of the watershed. So at least that was why we kind of chose this location as an opportunity to get back into the ground, but also stays in the watershed and gets back to the lake. So we're not going to take any water out of the watershed.
One of the other questions that I didn't know if you had a chance to speak with the building commissioner in regards to the height of the building. I know that was something that was brought up before, as the max height is 35 feet in a R1, and the proposed is 48 feet, 61 feet max.
Yep.
So I didn't know if there was any conversation
Right.
with the building commissioner in terms of that zoning.
Yeah, I'm Jason Bowers with Anbaya Architects. We've submitted drawings so we can get the rejection of the denial letter.
So you can go for the variance?
Right, yeah,
Okay.
that's what we are. And I haven't received it yet, but
Yep, okay. As long as the process has started.
So again, we didn't prepare a decision for tonight, but it would have to be conditioned on them.
The variance.
I think that's a case where, given the circumstances, it's okay to do it in that order. Other times when we might want to get the variance first, but I think in this case, it's a little bit different, so,
We can have it conditioned.
yeah, okay.
I had a couple questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
So remind us on the aerial that you have there, the excavated soil is being relocated where?
So the soil that is coming out of the excavation of the building foundation here, and it's being placed
Right.
here.
And where is the delineation of the zones to the lake in that area where the soil is going?
Here. So if you remember in the aerial, this is the edge of the woodlands
Right,
that go along there.
right?
These are the faculty housing you see out there. This is the soccer field that
Yep.
you see in the area. So the non-disturbance zone is here.
Yeah.
We are on the outside of the non-disturbance zone. We're in the non-discharge zone.
Yeah.
Most of the material is actually being placed here because the cross pitch of the field is too much.
Right.
So we're placing it right on that edge of the field to flatten the field
Right.
out, pitch it out.
So when the soil goes on, it has to be reseeded and fertilized.
So that, yes.
So what I wanted to ask was to focus on the fertilizer guidelines that you provided, thank you. How will that apply to this section where there's a fairly large area that falls into that new planting area, and how does that impact your use of phosphorus at that proximity to the lake?
So it's a great question because typically, and this is something that Brooks has had, when they put in new grass like up in here on campus,
Right.
they do use the NPK, the nitrogen, phosphorus, and
Yeah.
potassium fertilizer,
Right.
just to get it established and then switch to just nitrogen. In this case, since we're so close, we might want to even condition the protocol that the soil is tested and it's only adjusted for phosphorus for just like the rest of the protocol, and we just only treat this as a nitrogen placement and don't put any phosphorus this close to the lake.
I mean, I don't think we want to restrict your ability to get it back to where it is in terms of the cover for a soccer field, but it is in very close proximity to the lake, and the impact of excess phosphorus, some estimates 1 pound of phosphorus is going to yield 500 pounds of potentially toxic algae in the lake, and we don't want that.
Agreed, and I think Brooks is fully on board
Right.
with that, with all the testing. So I think what we may want to do is just say that we have to treat this fertilization like the general protocol and not the new grass protocol, which means the soil, the loam, when it's stripped off, would have to be tested.
So we could just condition that?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I appreciate the detailed description and answer, and, the partnership that Brooks has
Absolutely.
in really,
Because there's no reason to add phosphorus as long as the topsoil has enough to get the establishment. I think we do want to balance, though, and we should say, is that the stabilization of the area with its also proximity to the
Correct.
wetlands and the
Oh,
lake,
yeah.
we want to balance those two.
to stabilize the soil, sure.
Exactly.
Absolutely,
Exactly.
agree.
And that's also going through conservation as well.
Great.
Yeah.
And I have one other question, if you can go back to the aerial.
Yes.
So, again, I appreciate the description and all the work you've done for the flow of water from the site. This would be south towards the bowl.
Yes, so this way.
And you've put 2 rain gardens in between the site and the bowl to encourage infiltration. And as you were saying, if it does get to the bowl, then additional infiltration through the lawn. When you talked about this at the last meeting, you said there is no recreational use of the bowl. This is a curiosity question, have you ever considered other types of ground cover there that might be more effective in infiltration than grass? And perhaps lower maintenance?
To be honest, no, because of the nature of the campus is a pastoral one, and it's important to the identity of the institution, core to the identity of the institution. So this is the main visitor entrance.
Right.
So from an institutional standpoint and the feel of the place, it's actually fairly important that this is a grass or meadow type feel. Whether it's grass or meadow, I think is something we may be able to talk about over time.
Maybe think about over time, the whole idea is...
Use a lower maintenance seed or something.
Yeah, you're clearly, interested in the right approach here, but just curious if mowed lawn was the best infiltration and the best visual at the most reasonable sort of maintenance. It may be worth thinking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something we can discuss with the institution. I do think, just to be honest with the board, that it is an important aspect of the campus to
The
have
visual,
the look,
sure.
that it's
The-
part of who they are. As
The entry field.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
But
get it.
even all around campus,
Yeah.
with the mature trees,
Right.
the lawn,
Right.
how the buildings look.
I appreciate you being upfront, yeah. Thanks, John.
Good, good. Thanks, Pete. Okay, any other questions from the board? So we'll keep it open, and then we'll prepare a decision for the next meeting, right? Okay, good, great, thank you, appreciate it. Okay, moving on, Verizon Wireless. This is is this an amendment or a new one?
This is a modification
Okay,
to
it's
the
a
original
modification.
permit that was issued on September 6th.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And they are just adding one additional pole at 660 Chickering Road, and it's going to be the same type of equipment that we've seen on and permitted for the other poles. So we've drafted a decision very similar to what we have in the past,
Right.
where we've said painting the equipment to the pole to match the pole, as well as notice to abutters prior to installation.
And we're not waiting for any more information. Okay, so would somebody like to make a motion to close the public hearing on this wireless service facility special permit?
I'll move we close the public hearing for Verizon Wireless special service facility special permit.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's take a look at the decision. Can you, Rebecca, at the very beginning, it says approve the special permit modification. Can you actually reference there the specific permit modification to the special permit granted on town?
Under special conditions, number 1, painted to match, is that painted and maintained to match the color? Or just painted to match the color?
It was just painted, but we can change it to say painted and maintained.
Just envisioning huge, sheets of paint peeling off that thing would be bad.
Yeah, you're right. Yep.
I can add that?
Yeah.
And we can add, and as well as the other 9, because we're
Yeah.
modifying the other one, so because we didn't include it
I was
in,
going
Yeah.
to say it's not in the other ones.
right, so we'll put a reference here to catch the other 9.
Yeah. Good catch. Did we switched, we agree we were going to switch to 3 years, or we were going to stay with 2 years for
You're
the
going to
time?
stay with 2.
And wireless permits are by the bylaw 3 years.
Oh, they are 3, okay. Good, okay.
But we did agree to,
Yeah, okay, good. Okay. Somebody,
I'll make a
like,
motion to approve the wireless service facility special permit modification for Cellco Partnership, DBA Verizon Wireless,
as amended this evening.
as amended.
Okay. For a second?
Second.
A motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Moving right along, we're to continue public hearing, 1099 Salem Street, frontage exception lot. So,
Again, a brief overview. The applicant proposes to subdivide the existing 7.4 acre parcel into 2 lots. The applicant has submitted an updated site plan that shows the requested landscaping at the front of the site and some drainage mitigation in the form of a grass swale. This has not been through stormwater review, but some questions arise in regards to the flow of the actual water coming down the grass swale and whether or not there'll be any check dams or anything of that nature, as well as the size of the drainage pipe, and whether or not that's going to be allowed in conservation because it's leading right into the conservation zone. So there are some questions in regards to that. DPW provided further comment with concerns about disturbing more than 1 acre, as they are currently very close and want an AutoCAD file to support that the limit of work and verifies that they are in fact under 1 acre, because they think that they're over 1 acre. And lastly,
last one we did was more than 1 acre, right?
1975 Salem was over 1 acre. This
Yeah.
is at .98. So,
Okay.
but one other important note is that we received a letter from National Grid. They are the owners of the easement that crosses the bottom of the driveway, and they have said that they have received the plans, but they are in the middle of reviewing those plans and do not have a decision as of today.
Yeah.
Because the 2 driveways impact the
Right, it
area,
is
so there's
that,
currently
yeah.
one. So.
I mean, it sort of depends how the easement's written, isn't it? Yeah, so. Okay, so all yours. If you can update us on where things are and respond to those opening questions.
Yeah, Paul Marchand from Marchand Associates. This is Craig Marchand from my office, and David Kinder from Kinder Homes is here too tonight. So when we were here last time, there were 3 or 4 items that you asked us to address. One, John, you specifically were concerned about drainage. We talked about drainage, so I submitted a letter to the board on March 1st, and we did a calculation of how much impervious areas on the site today. It's about 1% of the site is impervious with the house and driveways. By raising that house, taking out that driveway, building 2 houses and adding driveways, we only go from 1% to 2%. So it's a real de minimis change in impervious surfaces. In terms of stormwater mitigation, though, we did propose to put a stone infiltration trench between the 2 driveways because it all kind of drains down into that area. So there's a stone infiltration trench right here to infiltrate any increase in water. Plus also a grass swale leading into that to help treat some of that water, even though we are under the 1 acre. I do want to correct one thing Rebecca said. If I heard it correctly, I may have heard it wrong. What DPW said is that because we're close to 1 acre, they want a CAD file, and they want us to stake it in the field, which we have no problem with. They didn't say we weren't over 1 acre. They said we're close to 1 acre, which we know we are. So that's what we did for drainage. You also talked about some landscaping.
Now, just very quickly on that, is that okay, that those drainage things, or are there questions about that?
They're just questions. We haven't had any stormwater review because it's not reviewed, but I can bring it up with DPW as they had concerns about the drainage.
This is a good one for the town engineer to look at, especially, I mean, part of what we're doing in this case is because it is because of the type of permit, we do want to make sure nothing runs down to the street, so, yeah.
Well, he did submit a letter. He submitted a letter on.
Who did?
Town engineer.
Did
March
review
6th.
it,
Yes.
but they didn't review the
Yeah,
stormwater.
as far as I can see, he's all set.
But it wasn't the updated plans with the landscaping and the drainage swale.
Right, okay.
We don't have the March 1st letter.
That's not correct.
The March 1st
Yep.
letter?
Yeah,
It should be.
March 1st is my letter.
yeah, we don't have it in our package.
You want one?
Yeah. I want to, am I wrong? Am I missing it?
The DPW comments are right here, the March 6th one.
If you look at the letter
There was a
from
response
March
to the
6th, which
March
you did
1st
yesterday from DPW, it was
Right.
based upon the revised plan we submitted on March 1st, 5 days before that. He's really set with everything as I can see. I don't see any comments.
Okay, well, that's
Yeah,
just
we
what
need
I
to
was
address.
I haven't looked at the letter, so if DPW's okay with it, they're okay with it, but let's just make sure they're okay with it, yeah.
So the, you took my letter. The other comment was about some landscaping. You want to see some landscaping? So we did provide some landscaping right between the 2 driveways up here, a tree and some shrubs in there. We didn't go back any further because that's inside the easement with the power company. Obviously, they don't want trees and things planted in the easement. They're opposite of that. They clear that stuff.
How many feet is the easement?
The
Roughly?
easement is right from here to here. It's 82.5 feet wide.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you going to have any problems clearing that with them?
Not at all, because they contacted us, we submitted a plan to them. What they're really concerned about is raising the driveway and impacting the clearance heights of the lines. We're at the same grade that's there now. There's no raising the grade,
Okay.
so. It's just a matter of them getting back to us and, responding. But we own the land, they have an easement over our land, so.
Right.
Certainly got a right to cross it with the
Yeah,
driveway.
okay.
You took my notes.
But it depends what it says, yeah.
What was
But
that?
they're smart enough to know what it says.
Besides landscaping?
National Grid. Yeah,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
I don't think we have the email from, he wants his back, but we have to pass this around too.
Do we have a copy of that?
The email from the
His
attorney.
response.
Yeah, I have the response.
Yeah, the other thing you asked last time I was here was site distance. We mark it in the plan.
Can we see that?
Yeah.
I have it in the next
Can
one.
we just pass that around?
I said, no,
I have it in the,
He wrote his notes on this.
Oh.
He's trying to go through his
No, we
notes too.
see his notes.
Yeah.
got a memory like a sieve, so.
this is his response. The February 17th letter. They said.
Is this the one she's making copies of?
Yes.
No.
February 17th one.
No. This is she's making copies of the March 1st one.
She made a copy of my letter,
Yeah.
not that one.
There's a March 1st letter, and then someone responded on March 6th.
Correct.
Yes, DPW did.
We have the response, we don't have the original.
Thank you.
The email.
Thank you. Okay, so this is Paul's letter.
Right, this was submitted on March 1st along with the revised plan. And there's the 4 bullet points. We talked about the drainage. We talked about the landscaping. The third point was someone had a question about site distance, so we measured the site distance. It's greater than 300 feet in this direction here, and you can see all the way to the intersection of Oxford Street this way, so there's plenty of site distance. The site distance required for that road is about 250 feet or less than about 246 by Mass Highway standards, so we exceed that. And the last thing you asked for, as I recall, was copy of the deed relative to the easement, so we just submit that to you, the deed, and also the letter from, the email from Kindred Homes attorney, just stating what the rights they have relative to the easement. So we submitted that as part of the package back in March 1st.
So we have gotten from DPW or not consensus that they're okay with this?
Submitted comments, but not final comments.
Okay, so there's still, I would suggest you talk to DPW to make them completely happy. And
do you guys
the
have
other
their
thing I
letter
think
there?
we have to wait for is we really don't want to make a decision until National Grid, says it's okay. It would be a lot cleaner that way.
John, if I could just take a moment here just to look at the March 6th DPW letter, because I'm a little confused here. The first comment I had was about the 2-to-1 slope on the septic system, and I explained how we have an impervious barrier. So they just suggest that we use erosion control blanket on 2-to-1 slopes, so.
Okay, my
We're
only
fine with that.
point is,
I just don't know what else to ask them, 'cause I already
who's
answered the
that,
questions.
whose note is this?
This is John Borghese, the town engineer.
Yeah, so why don't you just do this, oh, you did respond to it?
Yeah, he
Okay.
responded, and I think he's good to go.
Okay, my point is, and I don't want to go adjudicate every single one of these, is the point ends up being is before the next meeting, resolve the issues with them if you have any open issues, because we're not going to vote it until they, that's all. I mean, it'll take you probably a short period of time to do that.
No, it's no
So,
problem, John. It's just
yeah.
I don't think there are any open issues.
Well, make them happy. I think everybody here is saying there are, so it behooves you to get them to say yes, or 3 bags full, and then we're done.
And as far as the easement, I don't know how quickly the power company will get back to us. They said that it could take up to 8 weeks, possibly. You know, they're busy. So if we're still at that point, next time we meet, we'd be satisfied with a condition saying, you know, it's subject to the power company being satisfied. We don't want
Okay.
to prolong it.
But if you could prod them a little bit, it
I
would be-
emailed them again today.
Yeah, okay.
You know, so.
Is there anything else, Rebecca, that we need on this?
No.
Any other questions from the board?
Yes. How did it go from 1% to 2% of impervious?
Because you're knocking a house down. and
Oh, there's a
taking the
house on,
driveway,
okay.
yeah.
There's a house on site, okay.
It's really de minimis.
And you count like the impervious surface is just basically the building footprint and the driveway, right? I mean, that would be it. Everything else is,
Yeah, it's pervious.
lawn and stuff like that would be considered to be pervious. Okay, fair enough. Any other questions? We should be able to finish next time?
Again, with the condition, I don't anticipate National Grid will have final sign off, but
They
that
might.
could be, that
They
could be
might.
a condition.
Well, let's hope they do. I mean, I
If
think
not,
it's
we'll
fair, we can draft it with the decision. I think that's okay.
We don't achieve those. I'll let you
Unless
know
somebody
where we're
wants
at
to
with
wait,
them before-
yeah.
I'll let you know where we're at with them before hearing, so maybe if they haven't, you might put a condition in there saying we have to say this.
Well,
That's how we'll draft
we'll
it.
make sure, yeah, 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 okay.
When engineering submits something that says engineering comment noted, we just have to get clarification on that. What does noted mean to him? And
I'll talk to them.
that's all. We'll work to get a final sign off that if he has conditions he wants included, then he should suggest them.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Okay, good. All right, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving right along. Oh, a new public hearing, 58 Country Club Circle. What's,
This is a watershed special permit. The applicant proposes to construct a retaining wall, in-ground pool, spa, walkway, patio fence, and associated grading and landscaping in a non-discharge zone and non-disturbance zone. This is also a new structure in the watershed because it's a pool, so it will need to go for a variance from the ZBA. They have received their denial notice to start the process, and they are scheduled to be on the April 8th agenda. Stormwater has reviewed the plans and has asked for some corrections on the plans and made some comments concerning that the plan does not call for groundwater recharge. She also recommended that any further increase to impervious cover be restricted and that the planning board request a landscape plan. Additionally, she called out some items she suggested conditioning in the decision, such as prohibited further increase in impervious area, best management practices concerning pool and pool discharge, standard fertilizer and coal tar-based pavement restrictions, etc. The applicant has not had a chance to respond to those comments as of yet, and also the applicant has been in touch with the conservation agent in order to confirm the wetland delineation, and that should be happening shortly, so that will impact the plans as well.
Does anyone need to see a locus for Country Club?
Yes, I can put that.
yeah, I mean, if you could give us the 2-minute overview of the project, what you're trying to do, that would be a big help.
Sure. I'm George Zamboris. I'm the engineer from Atlantic Engineering, representing Mr. Don Stanley. Basically, the entire lot's in the watershed district. It's small, except for a very small corner of it. It's a 2-acre site. The building, the property was developed in around 1998. You have the existing structure and driveway and some walkways and a patio in the rear of the property. And what the intent is... That's okay. I apologize. I didn't know I couldn't point to something, otherwise I would have brought something with me. And I didn't realize until the last couple of minutes that you're actually looking at a screen. I figured it was behind you, so... Yeah, if you can zoom in. Good, thank you. So you have an existing patio and walkways along the rear of the structure itself. What the owner plans on doing is redoing those over, expanding them, the patio area a little bit, and then installing a pool and a patio and deck around the pool. In order to do that, he's also building a small segmented block retaining wall. The existing, you can see a dashed area towards the rear portion of the pool. That's an existing riprap slope. The front edge of that, the edge towards the building, that's the current top of slope and where the edge of the landscaping and grass is now. I should back up a little bit. For the most part, this entire lot, except for the front portion and the very northerly portion, was filled for the construction of the house. So if you zoom back in, please, Rebecca. Back in, yeah. So if you look at that hatched area, the edge of that bottom edge of the hatched area towards the rear property line, that's the edge of the disturbance, what was disturbed when the house was first constructed. And as you can see, the retaining wall we're proposing is just outside that. So for the bulk of the disturbance we plan on doing has already been disturbed. We're just redisturbing it again. The only very portion of the area that's natural that we're not disturbing is, see the curved portion of the pool? Between that and the rear line at that location, from the hatched area of the pool to the wall, that's really the only natural area that we're going to be disturbing then from what was first disturbed when the house was constructed. The rest is really... Can I point to this? It might be easier. Yeah. Right along this line here is what was disturbed. A lot of this area right here was filled during the construction of the house. So you have a little corner here. Right now, there's grass up to here within this area. So this area here, outside, is about the only portion of the natural ground that existed prior to the construction of the house that we're actually going to be disturbing completely new. The rest was already previously disturbed during the construction of the house during 1999.
So since the construction, though, this existing garage has been permitted for a watershed permit
Yes,
that has the pervious pavers.
The garage was permitted, but it was in an area that was disturbed during the initial
so it was
filling of the
filled,
house.
but
So
John,
there's
you may-
But you're correct, in 2006,
2006, it was a garage that he put a room over, but he
Right,
couldn't.
no, I remember
Yeah,
that.
so he couldn't construct the room over until he came back again, so
Right.
that, I think, happened maybe
Right.
2011, where he finished above the garage. So there are past watershed permits. We
Yes.
probably didn't condition the coal tar-based pavement, but fertilizers have probably been conditioned on the lot already, but.
and so the intent is to put the segmented block retaining wall. The wall height varies from 0 where it ties into the ground. There is a small section that's about 5.5, 5.9 feet tall. For the most part, it averages about 3 feet high. The drop-off that exists there right now is on the average of 4 to 6 feet. It ranges, so there will be a small area filling. One of the reasons why, other than aesthetics, obviously, based on the way the house and the property are laid out, the homeowner would prefer the location of the pool. In order to install the pool, to the extent that the pool and wall is completely outside of the non-disturbance zone, you would have to locate it up in this corner here. It's sufficient enough so that you don't have any retaining wall here. The problem is you have existing ledge here, and there's a natural high point in the property, which was within a couple of inches what the existing grades were before the entire development was built. The soils in the area, you have good soils and you have shallow bedrock. And we believe there was no test borings done there, but based on the topography of what's there and what you see in the remainder of the area, we believe there's shallow bedrock there. And in order to move the pool up there, you'd have to blast in order to install the pool. So other than aesthetics, he's trying to increase the value of the property. I feel the improvements will increase the value. Putting it up in the corner kind of deters from what his intent is. I did review most of Lisa's comments. More than half of them are added notations to the plans. What we show for a siltation barrier is our limit of work at just correcting that note. We can add expand on the note for phosphorus. There are two main items out of what she indicated that I'd like to elaborate a little bit further. She had a concern in the rain gardens that she felt that most of the runoff is not going to the rain gardens. It is. We can clarify that by simply putting some additional spot grades on the plan.
Can you just in general talk about how you're going to handle drainage from this?
Where the walkways will have a cross slope, the pool deck will have a slight cross slope, and there's a rain guarding that we're installing along the edge of the existing fire pit and seating wall and adjacent to the garage that we're directing all the runoff to.
Can you show us the rain gardens here?
There's a rain garden here, and there's another rain garden here. In addition to that, they're adding plantings here, they're adding plantings here, they're adding plantings here, they're expanding the plantings around the house to include all this area.
They're adding a lot of more planting areas. I think the net grass probably actually goes down and the planting areas increase.
Why we wanted a landscaping plan to be more detailed.
All of this is additional impervious surface.
Well, part of it's replacement.
Which part of replacement?
Well, all the work in here,
Yeah.
up to this location, is a replacement.
All right.
There's a little bit expansion here. This is the new impervious. With the extent of the impervious that causes runoff, you don't include the pool because the water stays in the pool.
What's around the pit there?
That's an existing area.
That's an existing
That's
area?
an existing,
And what is between the pit and, and the other things? Is it grass there, or,
in here,
no, other side?
over here.
Oh, nope, keep going. There,
This is grass.
That's
which is
grass.
now, but they're expanding it to put plantings here. They're putting plantings here, here. They're expanding the plantings here. They're adding more plantings here and adding plantings in this area.
so what's the increase in impervious surface as a percentage?
I think it's 1.5%, 1.3%, something like that.
On the lot is 2,708 square feet. And a net decrease in wooded cover on the site of 2,974.
That's an incorrect statement because it's not wooded. It's mostly grass. But
Okay.
But the increase in impervious surface area is 2,700 square feet, 2,708 square feet increase in impervious area.
no.
That's according to Lisa.
I believe her number is slightly wrong, but it's no more than that. I think it's a little bit less than that, but for the point of the discussion tonight, until I verify her numbers.
So you're talking like 50 by 50. I mean, that's what we're talking about, right?
Pardon me?
We're talking roughly 50 by 50, right? 2,700 feet is 50 by 50. I mean, just to put it in, and it's mostly the pool and the deck to the pool, right? I mean, that's basically what we're talking about here.
The wall is 250 square feet. There's,
Yeah.
So the main question I have right now, John, if I can,
Yeah, go ahead.
is in Lisa's letter, paragraph 5.
yes, which one of the other comment I was going to make.
Right, so what this is saying, if I understand it correctly, is that the total impervious area of the project site already exceeds the threshold of the Massachusetts drinking water regulations.
No, it does not.
That's what Lisa's saying.
This is the concern I have. This is what I have, and I'll elaborate in my letter. The section that she's referencing, 22.20.C, is a requirement that Mass DEP has put in their water supply regulations for newly created or expansion of water supplies. That's what that section is for. That's what they include that area in. Currently in the Mass DEP regulations for wellhead protection, they've required cities and towns to institute zoning regulations that deal with wellhead protection, wells, which have language similar to that. I drafted one for Reading, where I used to previously work. For existing water supplies, the correct regulation is 22.20B. That is for existing supplies. The DEP water supply regulations require you to institute And all these are to institute zoning regulations. No underground storage tanks, above-ground fuel tanks and stuff like that. There is no requirement for the limit of impervious in existing watersheds. I will provide you the information for that in my response.
So, yeah, you just need to work it out with her and convince her.
Yes.
So these are her initial comments.
Yeah. I mean,
After we-
that's fine, and, you know, you go about it in a
Right.
polite way, so I'm sure
Yes.
you'll be able to resolve it. I mean, the law's the law.
Very familiar with them.
so-
I've worked for
Yeah.
cities and towns since
Yeah,
1980.
we got to get it straight, and, you know, I mean,
And
I think,
the concern is still that it's a piece of property that's very close to the drinking water supply,
Yeah.
so
Yes.
issues that relate to the drinking water are and will be a concern.
yeah. and-
Absolutely,
And I
absolutely.
mean, I think in the end, the substantive thing is, if you're creating 2,500, give or take, square feet of impervious surface, what's your strategy to mitigate that flow and eliminate any degradation of the water supply, because that's basically
I
what
know
we're
on the
talking
existing
about.
site right now.
Too, in recharging, we gotta actually put the water back in, because,
Yeah.
like you said, the pool, the water sits there, so that actually is a detriment to our recharging of our lake.
Right,
So
and-
lake levels, as everybody know, is getting lower.
Well, the calculations we provided right now, based on, you know, what we're directing into the rain gardens, the rate of runoff coming off the property is essentially equal, and the volume of water coming off the property is essentially equal. And when I say essentially, volume is within like 120, 200 cubic feet of water.
Less or more? Because if everybody is a little bit less, then we're gonna, it adds up.
The, on a 2-year storm, pre-development volume is 1,090. And this is just from, I didn't do the entire site, I did the area within the area that we're disturbing. Pre-development volume is 1,090, post-development is 1,097. We're 7 cubic feet higher. Our 10-year storm, 2,565, post-development, 2,494. If you want me to up that number, I can redirect some of the water away from the rain gardens. And for the 100-year storm, it's 5,174 pre-development, 5,130 for post-development. We're 44 cubic feet less,
There is no swimming pool?
which is a few gallons, not many.
There is no swimming pool now on the property?
There's no swimming pool now, but you do have this, for the existing garage, they did a roof infiltration area. There's pervious pavement on the, that was installed in front of the garage. And this needs to be confirmed, but I believe most of the roof leaders are all going to infiltration systems too.
When you come back with the thing, the cleaning filter should be a cartridge filter as opposed to sand or some of the other ones.
Nothing needs to be back.
We don't want any of the runoff going into the lake or.
I guess this gets to item 6, I don't know if you looked at that, but it's about swimming pool chemicals.
Yes, the
going-
chemical is going to be stored inside the buildings, inside either the garage or the basement. I
But
haven't-
also, if the pool is drained, what are the
We will drain it in accordance with DEP regulations. There's basically DEP regulations. There's, I believe there's 2 methods. I have to verify this. The first is that if you, when you're draining the pool, if you let the chlorine, the sun destroys chlorine. So if you just let the sun eat up the chlorine for a couple of days, the water you're discharging, it essentially is dechlorinated. The other way is to add a chemical that will actually dechlorinate the water. Most cities and towns, most, not all, will actually do that when they're flushing hydrants. They're supposed to. When you're
Some of our other permits for pools in the watershed, we've actually asked them to provide a maintenance plan and a maintenance report that they can include as part of the decision. So if you could actually put something together that we could review the next time, that might be helpful.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's going to be maintaining this, and Sulphur is going to have a company, and since he hasn't hired a company, we'll get as best as we can for that.
Yeah, we'll maybe make you come back and so, before it's built, and make you do that if that's the case. Any other question? Pete, do you have any more questions right now?
I have a question.
Yes.
Not that I have a pool, but what if you get one of those 100-year storms or whatever, and the pool overflows?
with the chemicals in the pool?
That's what we're also concerned about.
I'll come up with
They
something for
do
that.
overflow. I mean, I've seen it in my neighborhood, so.
But you could do the.
Most,
and that could be a-
I have,
Yeah, but the pump would
Pardon
be
me?
going into the land with the
Exactly.
chlorine.
I have a pool, and my pool has never overflowed.
Yeah, but it's on the water, so it's still,
We
what if?
like belt and suspenders here,
Yep.
so, yeah. Lynn, did you have another question?
Yes, you mentioned that they did pervious pavement on the driveway to get the garage built. Was that the trade-off? Is that what you were?
They did that in front, yes.
Section in front of the garage.
And that you can check and make sure that's been maintained per the O&M plan.
And along those lines, is it,
Huh?
would it be a similar question about has it been following the deed restrictions on fertilizer?
Well, I mean, the O&M plan, they should have a,
Yeah.
I think it was required, they'd have it
Yeah.
vacuum trucked once a year,
Right.
so
No, I
they can
follow.
show that.
Yeah.
But what, are they gonna
Right.
bring it back and fertilizer
Right.
in?
The answer is yes.
I will find out and verify that.
Okay, good. So, basically work with the consultant, resolve all the issues with the consultant, and as soon as we resolve all the issues, we'll be in position to make a decision. And there's a few other things you said you would get back to us
Yeah,
on.
and no, just one other thing that I wanted to mention, Rebecca kind of touched on it. Since the wetland line is off our property, it's on the country club's property, we just can't go on their property and delineate wetlands. There's actually been court cases on it. So I have made a phone call to Mr. Coors, the general manager. He did not return my phone call today. I had actually called him Monday. But Jennifer from Conservation, right? She believes that he'll probably allow us on, so hopefully he'll allow us on so that we can delineate it, and then Conservation can verify the line. The line that we're showing on the plan right now was the line that was delineated and staked for the garage in 2006. Most of the court cases happened after that, so most of the wetland scientists no longer go on other people's properties. Someone actually lost their license because of it. Very good.
As far as sequence, it won't be notified the ZBA until April 8th, I believe.
Yes.
So we have 2 meetings prior to that. I don't know if you want to hold off.
Yeah, this one, I mean, this is one that I'd like to tie together and vote after because of the nature of it. But let's finish up everything. There's no harm in continuing on for hours and then waiting. If we get everything done, we'll just wait. Yeah, so, great, thank you.
Continue to the next meeting, and then
Yeah,
you'll just continue till after the ZBA.
yeah.
So continue
Yeah.
to response to it, work through those items.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Okay. All righty, we're on to our discussion items. Wheelabrator, what's up?
Recently contacted us to discuss a project that they would like to propose for their ash building. So in 1998, part of a site plan review was closing the existing ash building. It was actually 3 sides at the time. It was constructed to be 4 sides with a steel superstructure. What they're proposing, and they've been to a TRC meeting and really described this. Subsequent to the TRC, I asked that they just come in and present the plan to yourselves. It's maintenance of the building, essentially removing the steel superstructure and roofing and replacing it with really a concrete design wall. But it also includes relocating the, remind me, the
Scrubber.
scrubber, the wet scrubber.
So, but the argument here is, I can see it in the title, it's insubstantial change memorandum, so hint after tonight, no more review by any town board other than the building department and the health department, right?
The health department and building, certainly. Fire department is under full review.
Okay.
They're questioning the sprinklers. The fire department has said they do want them. There's an appeal process they could go through if
Yeah.
they'd like. So the health department and the TEC.
I guess I will just say, I'm glad to listen to the story, but it's a pretty long thing. We'll have to see if it's insubstantial or not. I guess I'll just leave it at that. So,
That's fine, but we have emission testing done on a regular basis with TEC Environmental. He actually stopped in. I was able to tell him my perception of what's going to go on. He visited the site, did a walkthrough of everything. if you deem it to be insubstantial, we could still condition that we want weekly testing from our monitor and things like that, if you do that.
Let's see what we got, so it's all yours. If you could identify yourself and tell us why you're here.
My name is Gary Colette, I'm the plant manager for Greater North Andover. And we are proposing to, as described, replace the superstructure of our existing ash storage area, which is required by permit. The history, going back to 1985, original construction of the facility, we had a three-sided, essentially bunker arrangement where the ash was stored in the open environment. It subsequently got a roof area. It was opened on one side. It was basically a shed sidewall and a shed roof. In 1998, the facility, as part of its emissions retrofit, came before the board, and in the process of that retrofit, which included the back-end installation of the scrubbers and the fabric filters and the removal of the electrostatic precipitators, it was decided that that ash enclosure, to comply with DEP, EPA permits, needed to be fully enclosed. So at that time, the bunker area and roof was fully enclosed with additional sidewalls. And over the years, that steel material, basically the building construction was standard structural steel siding, corrugated siding, and some FRP siding. Over the years, those materials have degraded, and we're now at a point where we've done some temporary shoring of the building, but we need to replace the enclosure around those bunker walls. We really don't have a choice. So the project really is a segmented project where we're replacing the sidewalls and the roofs in 2 phases. There's no expansion of the footprint of the building. There's no changes to soil, impervious or otherwise. We're essentially taking sidewalls, individual sidewalls of that enclosure down, reinforcing the bunker walls that are existing. We're coring into those, and essentially where there's right now steel and siding, we're going to use concrete, tilt-up concrete panel construction. So we're essentially replacing the building in kind, except we're using a different material of construction for the sidewalls and the roof. We're going away from steel and FRP siding to concrete. Technology's changed over the years, and it's far more, the life cycle is far better utilizing concrete. And that's really what we intend to do. It's essentially a 5-month project, and we're looking to get going in April. We went through TRC review on December 28th, and Concom's been on site. They did the walk down. The facility essentially pays a third-party engineer on behalf of the town, $30,000 a year, as was mentioned by Gene, to review our activities. He has been on site as well, walked down the project, and provided comments.
He met with myself, so I don't have comments yet. What I told him is that you were coming to the board to describe the project.
And he described what his comments were to essentially advise us how to structure this document, which is our position of it being an insubstantial change.
So, Pete, go ahead.
So when you change the construction of the building from the metal to the concrete, does that change the manner in which operations can be conducted inside that area? For example, does the concrete structure allow higher volumes or weight of ash to be contained inside than what the metal walls could formerly contain?
Really, it's a building envelope or an enclosure envelope. And
The concrete won't change the concept of operations or volume of ash inside?
no, there's absolutely no change to the processing in the facility before, during, or after construction.
And can I just ask, can you just remind me, where does the ash get taken?
The ash is taken to our Shrewsbury landfill.
Okay, thanks. And do you mind if I ask, how long have you been plant manager?
I've been plant manager at this facility since June.
Okay,
I've been with the company for 23 years.
okay,
I was ops manager at the Saugus facility for 5 years.
yep.
And I managed 2 of our largest waste-to-energy plants in the country in Florida for a period of 3 years. And I spent about 9 years at our corporate office. So
Great, thanks.
I do have the PowerPoint from the TRC presentation, which really had depictions of the ash house and showed the delineation between the concrete bunkers and the superstructure, if you feel it'd be beneficial to see.
Why don't let's go through the board. Laura, do you have any?
Yeah, when you're replacing the wall, essentially the walls, right?
Yes.
What happens to the roof?
So we're replacing the building essentially in, the first phase 1 is replacing 2/3 of that building. There's a long conveyor that transports the ash from the boiler building proper into this ash storage area. We're actually, so the first section, or 1/3 of that building, is a truck bay. That's where the trucks back in. We have a front-end loader that basically picks from a stockpile of ash, and they load the ash into the truck in 20-ton increments, and the truck goes off and it goes to Shrewsbury. So the first phase of the project, we're addressing the larger 2/3, and there's your picture. So you can see the truck bay section, and you can see that the conveyor that's coming into that area. Right now, in the original design, this conveyor actually extends about 75% of the way into that main ash storage section. So it's a very long conveyor, and we're stockpiling ash in that far left corner. And the loader essentially picks that ash and deposits it in the truck. Phase 1 of construction essentially has a shortening that conveyor. If you go back to that first picture, you'll see that the conveyor is now short and ends in that truck bed. Along this wall, there'll be a temporary containment wall erected, essentially isolating the 2 sections of the building. We go into the main storage section and remediate the building, which is essentially hybrid blasting.
What will you have empty, that main building?
Totally empty. Then we go in, we'll hire someone, as we typically do when we're cleaning inside the facility, and we will remediate. We have to
Yeah.
deal with ash every day, all day. We go in, we remediate it, test it, and then demolition starts. We complete demolition and erection of the main ash storage section. Once that's done, the conveyor, we have a new conveyor that's being installed, going back to its original length. The isolation wall stays in place. The conveyor itself gets shrouded over the truck bay section. We now start depositing ash, as we do now every day, and we start loading again normally. Then the truck bay section gets remediated, demolished, rebuilt, and we're done.
So do you stop operations during this whole
No.
period? Then what do you do with the ash during that time?
The ash leaves the facility as it does now. It goes into the truck.
But it won't have walls around it, right?
Yeah, so when we shorten the conveyor, right, the ash is going to be immediately loaded into the trucks. All right?
Instead of the storage area.
So you're bypassing the storage area. Got it.
Yes, that's the only way we can get the.
Didn't get that.
So you
Okay.
You need more
Didn't get
trucks.
that.
Didn't need
We
to
will
do-
have more trucks, and what we're going to do, we're not going to truck ash. We're not going to expand the timeline of where the trucks are leaving the facility. So at night, between 5 o'clock and 5 in the morning, we're going to fill trailers on site, and the trailers are actually going to park on the tipping floor, because the tipping floor is shut down at night. So we have existing storage area for those trailers. So they're just going to take the trailers out of the truck bay section, and they're going to pull them up to the tipping floor, they'll park the trailers, and at 5 o'clock in the morning, as they do now, they're going to start trucking ash to Shrewsbury.
During the construction, replacement of the walls project, what is the risk of an increase in airborne ash?
chances.
Why?
Because we'll have building containment as we do now.
So I just want to make sure I understand, why will you have building containment to control ash?
Because we're constructing a temporary containment wall between the two construction phases.
And the temporary containment wall, can you show me on this diagram? Is it the truck bay?
It's here.
It's the truck bay.
We're isolating 2/3 in the truck bay.
Okay,
So there's a containment wall that goes from floor to ceiling.
right.
It's tight, and they remediate and demo one side. When that's done,
Yeah.
it's just a
Maybe I'd like to come at it from a little bit different perspective, because I actually was on the board when this originally came through, so I do have some history and some context. A couple of things. I think typically when we look at things that are insubstantial changes is, kind of like at trees here or trees there, or this is a little this, a little that, truly immaterial, de minimis. This is actually a total reconstruction, so it's more than a tiny thing. But I think the broader picture is, when this was brought up the last time, rightly or wrongly, an awful lot of people in town had a tremendous interest in this. I personally think some of the comments people made were totally misplaced and out of line, but it was a free, open, transparent process. My biggest problem with just having us look at this tonight and passing this along is this is not open and not transparent. I think people in the town have a right to hear about this. I think this is, in the end, going to be pretty clean. But you're asking a lot of questions, and, there's probably more of them. And that's what the hearing process is about. So, speaking for me personally, I would rather hear this in public with a notice, because I want to give people I don't think anybody will come, but I want people a chance to come and hear about this and not do it in a closed, small meeting environment. That's just my personal preference. So,
My opinion is that the change is insignificant. The project itself is very significant. There are opportunities in that thing to, for problems to occur. And I think they've described pretty well how they can do it. But, there's a difference between what's in the planning and what's in the doing.
I understand.
And, we need to talk about, we are going to have our inspector. I think we need to have.
See, I see the
Sure
word
that-
repairs and maintenance, I see it totally different. It's the building envelope, it's repair and maintenance, it's actually not even, I don't think it's even a change. I don't think it's even an insubstantial change, as long as we agree with what they, changing it from a metal panel to concrete.
In an effort to
if
be
that was-
transparent, I do want to, we are proposing to move one piece of equipment that is inside that building to outside that building. And it's essentially a scrubber arrangement, a wet scrubber arrangement. So there would be a small shed building on the east side wall of that building, shown right there. Relocated existing wet scrubber. That's, right, so that is really the only expansion per se, or building addition, is to try and, we're building a small mechanical room, so we can take that mechanical equipment that's inside of that ash enclosure and bring it outside. It's just, that really is the change.
yeah, I think there's three ways we could do this. We could vote tonight that it's in substantial change and be done with it. The second thing we could do would be to say, no, you got to notice this. We'll do it a public hearing. We'll open and close it in one night. We don't think it's really too much. Just you got to get your act together and do it. Or a third one is basically the same thing but slightly different, is that we notice it, but it's not a public hearing, but we treat it as if it were a public hearing, to give people a chance if they wanted to come and be a meeting in public effectively to have this, what we're doing tonight, do it again, but more formally. I would rather notice it and do it in one night. Start coming. We don't want to slow you down. We think you're good guys and everything, but I think there's some public policy issues involved personally that I think people have the right to express their opinion about. So.
I like door number 2.
Yeah,
Yeah,
door number 2.
so,
And I think you've got a good plan here. I'm
Yeah.
not complaining about it, but I agree with the logic of door number 2, especially with the
I was
change.
good until you said about the change. But thanks for the transparency.
It actually improves the efficiency of the
Right,
operation.
but it's still a change, so.
The ash area, so. But
So-
I would ask that we would like to use the town's third-party consultant to engage, to help us satisfy your requirements.
So what I would suggest that you do is to work with the town planner to file a application, and we'll hear it at the earliest possible thing, and we'll do our damnedest to open and close you in one night, so, okay.
Appreciate it.
sheet of the concrete panels?
Excuse me?
A cut sheet of the concrete panels, what they look like?
Yep.
Are they just plain flat concrete?
We'll
I mean,
make them whatever you want them to
well,
look.
no, well, I'm sure you have something in mind, but, I mean, the building's not attractive anyways, but a plain gray, flat concrete building
Right.
could actually be worse.
Before I drove here, I drove down the street.
murals on there?
That'd be nice, we can do some, yeah.
So the adjacent buildings, and I'm not talking about our buildings, I'm talking about the old cup manufacturing facility and the industrial facility that's left next to it. So the adjacent buildings are all concrete construction, straight wall concrete construction, and they're painted. So, I mean, if you want us to remain consistent with that, we will,
When you say straight wall, that's just one big slab then?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else be interested in a site visit?
A visit? Sure. I don't think I've ever been there.
I haven't, and in the package, very helpfully, there are some photos. But looking at those photos, I thought, gee, it would be helpful if I could put this in context with a visit, if that's possible. I'm not hard over on this, but I think it would be of
I think
interest.
it would be a bit, I don't know how
I
you
would
typically handle
absolutely
that.
welcome anyone's visit.
Is it safe?
I had a group of 50
Oh, he'll go
Cub
on
Scouts
safe
through
for those who
yesterday.
want.
Yeah. So why don't we work to arrange a suitable time or suitable times for people to come if
Saturday
they,
morning again, I know, typically want to Saturday, but
7 a.m. Saturday.
no.
it's too early.
Not going,
Oh, yeah.
So
in there.
if I can, we only move ash between the hours of 6 and typically 12:30 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. So a Friday afternoon, the ash house, there'd be no trucking activity taking place, and it would be,
Well, we'll work something out.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
or Saturday.
We just looked at timing, so if you can get us a timestamped application, even without the supplemental material, we can prepare a legal notice, get you in for the first meeting in April,
So it'd be a modification to the original permit.
and then you'll have to supplement all the information between now and that hearing. but- okay.
We'll send you all that documentation, so you'll be all set.
That'll help you out.
It's a two-page application, so that part's not the hard part.
Thank you, we appreciate you coming in and
Thank you.
educating us.
Thank you for having us.
Welcome to the plan.
Yeah.
Thank you. By the way, this is Matt Hughes, who's our regional environmental manager, and Kevin Beauregard is the site's environmental health and safety
Got it.
manager.
Good. Well, thank you for your efforts. Yeah. Okay, moving along, master plan update.
Well, the consultant cannot be here tonight.
Yeah, the consultant, was she going to?
I think she was just going to give us an overview, so instead, we're not talking about the zoning bylaw tonight, we're not. No, I'm not.
Oh, shit.
I'm not.
No.
So, yes, Judy Barrett, who works for the consultant, was trying to make it tonight. She couldn't. I've asked if she or another senior person could attend the March 21st meeting. But for now, what you had in your packet is the response to the RFP, which really outlays in 3 phases what's going to happen, or at least what they propose to happen. And essentially, it's data collection, finding out where we are in the first phase. The second phase is really, reaching out to the community, reaching out to all the stakeholders, gathering information in terms of where we want to be. And the third stage is really updating the zoning bylaw and coming up with implementation. Um,
So I guess the question is, so. I'll just-
Go ahead.
All right. So we're supposed to start selection of people. Start selection for people to be on the committee. There's people that have applied, so we're going to interview them.
Right.
So we just didn't know if you wanted to meet with the consultant and hear and get the input as to what we should be looking for, or
For
should
the
we,
selection.
for the selection, or, should we start at least interviewing, and then she can come in maybe the next meeting, and we can talk about that? Because Jean's concerned, rightfully so, about the timeline that we're getting behind on at least starting to interview people that have shown an interest in being on this. We don't want to lose people.
No, you don't want to, are you saying we're not responding to that, or people are waiting, or what's?
They're waiting.
I think they're waiting for the board's direction in terms of what
think
role
they
do you
were-
want to play up front
My
here?
understanding was they were already told that it was going to wait till after the meeting. If that's changed, that's what
Tonight's
I,
meeting?
no, after we meet with the consultant. They were
Okay.
all
Well,
supposed to be
if I don't want
notified.
to wait any longer if she's obviously not here tonight.
She's not here tonight. She may or may not be here the 21st. She's, again, whether her or another senior person, I'm waiting to hear back.
But I mean, can't somebody like call her up on the phone and talk? Can't you just talk to her on the phone,
Well,
Laura,
I
and
think
find out
the
what?
issue is that if we just looked at this, if everyone just looked at it, if you had any questions, because it's pretty well laid out what they do and how they're going to assist us.
So my perspective is, I don't feel an urgent need that we delay the interviews to
Yeah.
have the person here. But as a member of the board, I would like to hear the person describe the process. But I don't necessarily feel it has to be tied to the interviewing.
I agree exactly with you.
Because
Well,
the
we
written,
can't-
the
but we
written
can't
What are we
plan,
looking for with the people?
Well,
on the
I
committee
think-
if we
That's
don't
the
get
issue.
input
but
from
can't
the
you just,
consultant?
can't you just talk to the consultant by phone to
If we
accomplish
can,
that, if you
Yeah,
can?
a few minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think really what you want is, obviously, you can go through all sorts of things, is you want to have a mix of perspectives and opinions. You want to have somebody that's willing to devote time and attention to it, and you hope that it's somebody that has subject matter expertise in one of the relevant areas that we're dealing with. I mean, I think that's really what it comes down to. I would think the cream would rise to the crop pretty readily on something like this. Maybe I'm wrong,
Right, but I think
yeah.
the question was, and probably just me overanalyzing it, right, Jane? Is whether, are we looking for, two people that have a specialty in this and two people that have a specialty in that, or what are we looking for? I mean, I
agree.
just don't want to go into the selection
Well, there's
process
also a very
blind.
small pool, and I think we have to reopen it up.
See, I
Is
think
it-
we do too.
There's an extremely small pool.
You mean people responded?
Yeah, I don't think it got out there.
Well, I mean, that's the bigger issue then,
Yeah.
it's that, because you want to get, if you're picking
10,
7, you want to get 20, 30 people.
Well, exactly, we don't
We
have
don't
that.
have that.
We're not even close.
Because then otherwise you're going to take everybody out.
Exactly.
I mean, that's,
Yeah.
and you don't know whether
Yeah.
you're really going to,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's a little bit, I almost feel like we should think of people that we know that we think would be good on it.
True, but we'd also want to make sure that I think it's important enough, it should have gone out, to everybody, whether it was in a newsletter, quarterly water bill newsletter or someplace that's more prominent. I mean, it's a big thing for us, so.
When do they have to be on board to start?
She couldn't start, that was the whole thing. They said the RFP was, they could not start until late March, I think.
Oh, but
was
still,
my understanding.
before the town meeting.
Okay.
But it's still before the
I
town
do
meeting.
think a good idea is to advertise it again somehow publicly. I never saw it.
No.
I never saw it.
I never saw it.
Yeah, so I mean,
When we read stuff,
but, I mean, not to say it wasn't, but I just never saw it.
Well, I mean, the problem ends up being is that if you think about it, you want it as an article in the paper as opposed to an advertisement in the paper. Doing it as an advertisement's a joke.
paper's outdated too.
Yeah, paper's outdated. Is it on the town's website? I mean, it seemed to me you could prominently display it on the town website.
My understanding, it was on the town website, and it was in as a legal notice, I believe, type format.
But, yeah, I mean, legal
Like
notice
on-
is
on
worthless,
Facebook
but,
or-
yeah.
Patch.
I don't,
I like the idea of being in the water bill. It
Yeah.
takes longer, but
I don't know when the next one comes
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, I
But the
just,
newsletter, so-
yeah.
I think it just
I
came
just
out.
did,
That's
yeah.
right.
I think it
Yeah.
just came, I remember looking.
So, but I also think that it's almost like everybody should come up with the name of a person they think should be good on it. That's where you're going to get the very best people.
I came up with you.
Oh, so, I mean, I got 3 or 4 people, that unfortunately, it's all the same usual suspects, but,
Well, and I think that's good, but I think we do want to include, new people in town.
Right.
So what is the best way to reach them? I don't know.
So,
What do you think?
well, the selection committee's been established, so why don't you guys talk about that and if that's your recommendation to renotice it, then.
yeah, I mean, even like it's schools with the PTOs and stuff. I mean, notify all the PTOs because that's
Well,
one
maybe
of
I
the
could
prime
send that email to the
constituencies.
selection committee. We don't need to have a meeting to
No.
decide that. Okay.
Yeah.
But I guess it's just the agreement to simultaneousely start working to that while I still try to get someone in here on March 21st.
Yeah, we're going to get somebody
Yeah,
in here. I mean,
I do think we
yeah.
need more people to
Yeah.
apply.
I don't think it was really, yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people, what percentage of the population gets in the newspaper anymore. It's just a small group, so,
I read Facebook.
Okay,
yeah.
so, that's what we'll do.
So we want her to come in.
Oh, we definitely want her to come in, but let's not tie the two together. Let's, yeah.
The selection committee's been formed, and I think everything's just kind of been on hold. The resumes are in, I wasn't part of the email, but I guess they were sent to the selection committee. And so it's up to, if you want it to be renoticed, I think just make that recommendation.
I will. I'll send you an email tomorrow.
Skype on this thing?
Use Skype.
So could have a video conference
With whom?
Okay.
with
She'll come in.
this woman.
No, she'll come in. The problem is just
Getting the
whether
time
she's on
when
the
she-
phone or whether, we're looking at her
Yeah,
or physically here, it's the same thing. I mean, yeah.
Exactly.
She's just out of pocket right now. So, okay, so that's the master plan committee. Annual town meeting,
Okay, so we discussed at the last hearing, the warrant articles that the board is going to propose. There were 3 of them, 2 zoning map corrections and 1 having to do with the effect of subsequent amendments.
okay.
Citizens petitions were due yesterday, so we did receive 3 citizen petition articles, and I put those in your packet. Whether you want to just take hard copies and digest them for the next meeting, the public hearing won't be until the first meeting in April. So of the 3 that were submitted, 1 is related to a host agreement for which is not a zoning article, so the one that's numbered number 1. Okay.
So which is the first one?
First one, number 1, is related to a host community agreement.
Where's,
Right here.
level 1?
So that is authorization of the town manager and board of selectmen to negotiate and execute a host agreement for the medical marijuana cultivation facility. That, like I said, that is not a zoning article. I've just provided it. It was submitted as a citizen petition, but that won't be part of the legal notice or public hearing for zoning articles. The next 2, however, are proposals for amendments to the zoning bylaw. Number 2 has either straight-through language or added language which is underlined for our existing medical marijuana overlay district language. And the 3rd one is the zoning map amendment, which proposes to include a certain portion of 1600 Osgood Street into the medical marijuana overlay district.
Okay. So those are all the citizens.
So they've been filed, yep, and so the legal notice is due to the Tribune next Wednesday, and so I'm going to incorporate these in the legal notice for the public hearing with the 3 we talked about last meeting, and it'll be noticed for the April 4th meeting,
Okay.
okay, which allows 2 April meetings and the 1st of May, theoretically, for you guys to evaluate these proposals.
Okay.
Okay?
Good.
So,
And the next item on the agenda is the Osgood Committee update.
I'll take that one.
Okay.
Everybody has the memorandum that was sent to the Board of Selectmen. it was draft, but a draft was approved. Oh, you can have my copy, John, 'cause you
What is it?
it's in, the Osgood Committee made a finished their report basically, and made 3 recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. We were asked to give it to the planning board, the zoning board, are given the memorandum and can actually give input individually or collectively as a board back to the selectmen on which options they want to do. There's basically 3 options. One was, the first option is that everybody believes the bylaw needs a fair amount of rewriting and it can't be accomplished this year. It's just leave the bylaw as is for now, do nothing. Option 2 is to, which one's the order? Basically get some sort of moratorium on the residential housing units, but the state law doesn't allow a moratorium. So it would to allow the owner of the property to put a voluntary moratorium somehow that would be sufficient with our town council that would stand up in some sort of challenge possibly. And 3 would be to remove the 40R in its entirety and then let the zoning master plan play out. John's still reading.
Okay.
So,
Is there a recommendation, or are you
Well,
just taking, I mean, is
no,
there a consensus
they
view?
asked the committee not make a recommendation as a committee. That the land use boards can make it individually or collectively. If we want to give any recommendation back to the selectmen on any of these options.
So us as individual members
Can make them individually or collectively. They didn't feel they felt the committee, because the selectmen were, Dick Valancourt was the chairman of the committee, was also on the board, that it might be perceived incorrectly or something, making a recommendation.
So, fair enough.
So-
Do we all have copies of this?
It was in the package. We can actually take it up next meeting if we want. Everybody can read it, because it's a pretty lengthy memo, and take it up for the next meeting, get comments back to the selectmen
Okay.
if we want to, so. You can have my copy, John.
Gee, thanks. Just put it in my car, it'll get lost with my mess.
If you look at your agenda, you can click on everything in it.
Oh, really?
Rebecca has it very high tech.
Oh, I see. It's very sophisticated, yes. Ooh, excellent. Okay. The minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the February 21st, 2017 meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You folks are obviously here for something, but other than if it was something that's already in the agenda, I'm not quite sure what you're here for.
The last 3 items on the agenda, we thought in case you had any questions, we would be present.
Well, we are all through them, so I think we are all good, so that's great. Thank you.
I just have one miscellaneous item. So Lisa Eggleston has informed us she is retiring and relocating to Colorado with her family.
Where, is she moving to Denver or to?
I don't know exactly where in Chicago. So her son and her daughter both live out there, and I believe her parents.
Okay.
There was an unfortunate medical issue with one of her children mid-January or so she's actually been out there substantially for the last 2 months. She is going to, over the next 2 months, transition out of the projects that we've given her. So she will help finish the Brooks and 58 Country Club, those projects. But going forward, to date, we've always kept the engineering review separate from stormwater. I would recommend to continue on that path. With stormwater, we have to also consider conservation uses the same one, so we'd want their input. So our thought is to just do an RFP, try to solicit some quotes, see what we get, and include Jennifer Hughes in the review of those, but to establish another stormwater review.
Okay.
Okay.
And do you need anybody from the board to review as well?
I don't think at this time, but when we get them in, we certainly can forward them around.
Maybe you could circulate the RFP too.
Yep, sure. There has been,
We should do some acknowledgement to her. We thank her for her service over the years. You know, I don't know if there's an appropriate way to do that.
Sure,
You know.
we'll talk about that.
Yeah, okay.
There has been suggestion that maybe we get a pool of 3 and rotate projects amongst 3. In discussion with Jennifer today, I lean towards just keeping 1, so you get a consistent
You get a
approach with
consistent,
each project.
yeah, and they have, then she's developed experience with us in the town and
Right.
everything. yeah.
So that's, again, discussions with Jennifer, she agreed with that path. I just want to make sure everybody here agrees.
The one thing I might say is you might want to try, take the 2 people, try them on the 2 different projects and then decide from there,
Or I was gonna say,
compare,
If you
and then-
start off with like, not even, I don't know how it works contract-wise, but like a 3-month period or 6-month period to see how it goes.
For the civil side, we contracted for 2 years because we just don't do a lot of civil review. It's sporadic.
But we know that.
But with stormwater, it's almost every project, so it's certainly more
You
activity.
mean a probationary period?
Just to see how it
that's fine.
works, we don't want to get into.
Yeah.
That's fine. We'll
Well,
see what,
Just have termination for convenience.
Well, it's also the billing too. I mean, in all honesty, I thought Lisa's billing was pretty fair to the applicants,
Yep. So we'll see what we get for a pool
Yeah.
and then talk about a strategy on how to engage with them.
Alrighty, motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great.